But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things, there is no law. Man, I hope this series so far, talking through the fruit of the Spirit, has been powerful in your life as you've heard these things, as you've reflected on these things, and you've seen some of these things manifest in other people's lives. And we're going to continue on that today by talking about the fruit of patience. And this is an interesting one, isn't it? Let me give you a definition of that term, patience. Patience is the ability to wait for people or situations without getting annoyed. I don't know about you, but this is a tricky one for me, right? This idea to wait for people or situations that things aren't going well, they're not doing what I anticipate, maybe even things aren't good, to wait for those things without being annoyed or really being impatient. I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of translations now, instead of patience, are using the word forbearance. And so you might wonder, what's the difference? They're very similar words. They're really synonyms, but forbearance has a little bit of a different term. It can mean to refrain from the enforcement of something, like debt collection, right? If you get a forbearance, sometimes it puts that off for a while. It's actually self-restraint and tolerance. So think of this. Forbearance would be more restraining yourself under provocation, right? Someone's provoking you and provoking you and provoking you, and you just don't respond even though your buttons are being pushed. And patience is more being uncomplaining or resigned even through discomfort, right? Where you don't complain. Maybe it's bothering you on the inside or whatever, but you just sort of don't complain and resign yourself to that's the way it's going to be for a while, even through a season of discomfort. In Hebrew, the language of the Old Testament, to forbear means to be still. Not to move around. I don't know about you, but when I'm impatient, I get up and I move, right? Like there's got to be some way to expend some of this energy and to feel a little bit better. So think of this, the idea of patience or forbearance can be remaining peaceful and still in the Spirit, even in the middle of trials and temptations. Isn't that so good, right? That we just sit under a tree. We remain still in the Spirit, even in the chaos of the world, even when those things kind of are encroaching in on us. And then let's add to that another biblical term that sort of pushes in this exact same direction is long suffering. And I won't go into a big, long definition there, but it does add one other component to this similar concept, which simply is long. So what happens when we have to deal with situations that we don't want to have to deal with for any time, like 0 seconds, 0 minutes, 0 days, 0 weeks, 0 months, 0 years, and then we have to have patience, forbearance, long suffering in that for a significant window of time. Listen, here's the truth. We are not a patient people, and we're not a patient culture. We are way more about our rights and our revenge, right? Like we want what we deserve, what we've been promised. And if somebody has wronged us, we want them to make it right. And if they don't, we will, right? But this is not the fruit of the Spirit. When I was a kid, I had a family member, my aunt. She taught me all kinds of little sentences and sayings that were fun and funny, but somewhat inappropriate that I really couldn't share publicly. I a lot of times would have these daydreams of like saying some of these things to my teachers or maybe even my parents, but I just never had the courage wisely to do that. Well, one of those was she had a definition for patience that I remember to this day, and she simply would always say this: patience is just the lack of courage to change a situation. Right? Like if we weren't all wimpy like we are and didn't blame patience, we would have the courage and the might to forcefully change the situations and the people that we didn't like and appreciate in our lives. You know what, though? That's not really what the definition of patience is. Patience is one of the fruits of the Spirit that comes when we trust God. So what happens in your life and in my life when we have more permanent things take place that are negative? What happens when a physical thing happens or some other kind of thing happens? I remember in some of my premarital counseling, one of the friends and pastors that spoke into our lives asked us this question as 20-year-olds. Rob and Bethany, I know you guys love each other and you're excited about the rest of your lives together, but what happens if one of you gets in a terrible accident and, for the rest of your lives, there's no physical intimacy or affection in that way, but basically you're just providing care and wiping each other's butts for, maybe decades to come? Do you still want to do this? Do you still love each other? Do you have that kind of patience? What happens if someone has a stroke? What happens if there are just sort of physical things in life that happen, diseases or just diminishments that take place in our lives that we're never going to get back? You know what? The answer to all these things isn't new medical procedures or technology. It's Jesus. And so when we have this fruit of the Spirit in our lives, even in difficult things that may last for the rest of our time here on earth, this fruit of patience can well up and fill in all of those gaps and make the ultimate difference in our lives. New Hope, let's inspect the fruit of patience today.
Hi, New Hope. How you doing? I was sitting up here thinking, I've got my lip gloss, I've got my peppermint. Believe it or not, I do get nervous, and I get nausea every time I get up here. It's just like, you're putting hand lotion on. I'm thinking we're being so casual. Then I hear Rob talking about wiping butts in his Devo, and I'm thinking we're in good company. We're in really good company today. So, how you doing, sister?
I'm doing great.
Good. So, Rob says patience is the ability to wait on people, situations without being annoyed. I guess we could include God in that also. And wait, that's such a gift from the Spirit, from God. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being doing really well, where are you at on that?
Well, sometimes a 0. Yes. But when I allow the Spirit of the Lord to lead me, I can get closer to 5.
You can get closer to 5.
Yes,
yeah,
I can get closer to 5. As long as I'm not in the way, 5 is definitely the goal. I'm close to it, but it's difficult to get to 5 if I lead.
I'm thinking I might grow a little in my scale now that I understand patience has something to do with waiting and kind of waiting expectantly and kind of realizing that there's this hope. Romans 8:25, but if we have hope for what we do not yet have, we will wait for it patiently. And so as I kind of ponder through that, I'm like, Rob mentioned he gets up and wants to get busy or do something. Obviously, in my waiting, I want to fix it, or I feel like, well, I have to solve it to some degree. And recognizing now that is like a time where God is just like saying, I need to do something kind of in you at this point while you're hoping and waiting expectantly. And phew, that's a big deal.
Yeah, sometimes he just wants us to sit and wait and watch. There are other times when he wants us to do something, but I find that it's difficult to just sit and wait, just rest, just watch. Yeah. I was looking at the book of James, St. James, chapter 1, verses, I'll start at 2. Is that okay if I go there?
You go.
Okay.
Yes.
Actually 2 through 8. It says, "My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations or trials, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. Verse 5 says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. So as I look back through that, and I kind of wrote some notes here. In verse 2, it says, count it all joy. So already we see the fruit of joy there, right? We talked about joy. It is a fruit, right? It is within the fruit of the Spirit. It's in Galatians 22, right? And then verse 3 says faith and patience. Those are both listed as well, right? In verse 4, it says, but let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. So perfect means to be mature or growing spiritually, bearing fruit in a sincere endeavor to love the Lord with all your heart, in undivided devotion, obedience, and blamelessness. It is to be peace-filled. Love, joy, peace, patience.
They so intertwine.
Yes.
I mean, and I
Yes.
think that helps also. We'd started earlier into the series of they're not separate fruits. They're a fruit.
Yeah.
And there's a segment of the fruit of the Spirit. And you can't have one without the other.
Without
They're
the
just
other.
Constantly intertwining. It's
Yes.
absolutely fascinating.
Isn't that fascinating? And then in verse 5 he says, and I'll hurry on, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not. Sometimes when you're going through trials, you want to know why. You ask God, why am I going through this? Especially when things seem to stack. It seems to be one thing after another after another. Why am I going through this? Or it's something huge. Like Pastor Rob said, what do you do when something big happens to your body or to your spouse? Or, what do you do when you're faced with something huge?
Yeah.
Why, God? If you ask him for wisdom, he'll tell you without making you feel stupid for asking. And
Yeah.
this is significant because coming from James, because James, this James here, is the half brother of Jesus. And he did not follow Jesus during Jesus' earthly ministry. Why? Because he didn't believe. Not until later. Not until much later. And so now he's learned. He's a believer now, and he says, hey, I've learned that you can ask him for wisdom, and he will give it to you without making you feel stupid. Isn't that everything? Wouldn't you feel so dumb if you were the Messiah's brother or sister and you didn't believe him, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, you really are. Oh.
All this
Would
time,
you just
I thought,
expect him to be like, you big dummy, And he didn't treat you that way? Yeah.
My
So-
brother thought he was God when I was growing up, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
Sorry, brother, if you ever listen to this. Oh, this is your
So-
last visit with
This
us
is my last time.
for the
yes.
series. Isn't it been awesome having Linda?
Thank you so much.
Oh,
It's been awesome being here with you all too. Pastor, you all have been such a blessing to me. To me and my husband both, we have just enjoyed being here with you all. You've been so loving and kind, and thank you. We're going to miss you, and I'm trying not to cry. I cried last time. Jeez. Sorry, but I made you a gift, Mary, and I want you
Oh, yeah?
to open it. Yes.
oh. Oh, I know what this is. Oh, look. Oh. Oh, it's just,
It's a queen wreath, and On the material on her head wrap are the fruit of the Spirit written out: the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And against such there is no law. Hey, I memorized it. Y'all been memorizing? Okay. All right.
She's a beauty.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad
Thank you
liked
so
her.
much.
You're welcome.
Now, this next little fruit inspection we got
Yes.
comes with some excitement. And we have a
Yes.
little intro video. You ready?
I'm ready. I'm
Okay.
ready.
All right.
Let's do
Let's see this.
Can I see after you're done?
Welcome to Markles. Oh, you guys.
A small glimpse into our lives.
Oh, that is so good. Well, we're super excited about having you guys here. And when we were putting together the pre-interview and the storyline, I was just taken back about how amazingly perfect this conversation is for a demonstration of godly patience. And so we're going to get right to it, that patience is the segment of fruit that the spirit that comes when we are resting in God, waiting on Him. And your story is just full of a lot of waiting and resting and maybe sometimes screaming. And let's just get right to the blunt of it. You're married, you had some property issues in your first house to your second place, and you're going to start a family, and here you are. So take it from there.
All right, well, John and I were, I laughed because I leaned into him when we were getting ready to get up on stage, that our story started with patience from the very get-go, because when John and I met, he was brother to my youth minister. So I was 13 and he was 23, which is a bit scandalous, and problematic. It's not as big of a deal when you're 33 and 23 as it is when you're 23 and 13. But when I was 18, we decided we were finally going to start dating, and then we got married in 2009 when I was 22. So we got married in 2009, and then we lived on a property that my parents owned that was connected to their farm so that we could get a start of our own. And we decided that we needed to move for some circumstances that we can talk about in a little bit, but we needed to move, so we were going to buy our very first home, and that's sort of where John is going to do some talking.
So we bought this house, and it was a train wreck from the word go, pretty much. We got in over our head on it because they had more stuff than we needed to do with it that we didn't have the money for. So it was kind of like, great, now what? So anyway, we got a loan for it and was doing the work on it. And Laura and I were just butting heads constantly. It's everything was a fight, it seemed like. Between trying to have kids and trying to get this house to go, and everything was kind of just a cluster, basically. And anyway, we were working on the house, and some guy left a note on our
A sticky note.
mind you, on the front porch and said, "Hey, I want to buy your house off you." And I was like, well, that's weird, but okay. So,
Especially this house. You want this
yeah,
house.
exactly.
Which is beautiful from the outside. You just didn't know what you were getting into until you got in it.
inside. Anyway, we got all fixed up, and we sold a house to the guy, and we got more than what we paid for it naturally, and then we found out we had to do treatments for having kids, and so that was like $13,000 or $15,000, something like that. Anyway, we sold the house and had enough to do the IVF for our first child. So
Wow.
that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so how was that as far as your faith building at that time? What were you thinking as far as, is God in the midst of this? What did you think?
I mean, it's pretty amazing that someone came to or out of the blue and said, "Hey, I want to buy your house," and that's pretty impressive, I would say.
But God, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was pretty amazing. So that's a big step. And
Yeah, and when we moved into the home, we lived there for 28 days. So we closed and we moved on October 1st, and we moved out on October 28th.
Okay.
And when we found out that we needed to move, we needed a place to go, So in a quick way, we needed to find a place to live. So at the time, Jeff Cooper had asked me to get up on stage for something else and asked me to tell that story just to put a shout out and see if anybody knew of any place to live. And Mana McMullen approached me and said, "Hey, my kids are getting ready to move out of this house. They need somebody to rent, in their stead." And we connected the dots, and we were able to find a place to go because, God provided it. And in that moment, we were sitting in this cabin, staring at each other, living up boxes stacked all on either side of us. And John says, "God really does take care of us, doesn't he?"
Oh, amen.
And
Yeah.
when we were talking about it, about today, when he didn't remember that story, but I will never forget that moment, because it was this moment where my husband realized how much God was in the midst of everything that was going on, and it brought joy to my heart.
Yeah. You had trouble. You tried for a couple years to get pregnant, and then the money that this house was left was enough to get you started on the IVF. And so going into this, was the hot mess because of the house, or was the hot mess because of chaos in your life? Was the hot mess because of, once again, you're not pregnant? I mean, can you go into those details a little bit?
All of the above.
All the above?
Yes, and
Okay.
yes. Chaos, infertility is a beast, and anyone that will ever have to walk in it, I would not wish it upon anyone, because there's this man who desperately wants to give his wife a family and a home, and it's like all piling up around us. So not only were we struggling with infertility and just the grief that comes along with a period coming every single month and the answer always being no. And on top of that, I felt this need to ask God if there was anything in me that needed to be taken care of
Right.
in order for us to have a family, because in your mind you're going, okay, so what if it's him and what if it's me and what can we do? And you try to call this doctor, do this procedure, do this thing, take this medicine, go get this, needles in your face or stand on your head afterwards for 20 minutes just in the hopes. I mean, I will do what I need to do to make this happen. But the only thing that we hadn't done was to seek what God wanted him to accomplish in us. So I took some time on a trip that I went on, and I sat before the Lord in this place that's bathed in 24/7 praise and worship and prayer since the 90s. It was a beautiful opportunity. And I sat before him and said, if there is anything in me that needs to be taken care of, that we need to get done and up and out for us to have a family, then I'm saying, okay, whatever it is, God. Not expecting him to be like, rock your world. But, come to find out a couple weeks later, I started having some really interesting sort of flashback situations. And I had an 11-year-long sexual abuse in my life from the time I was 3 till I was 14. that had hidden itself away in my heart. Disassociation is the term that your mind can't process the trauma that's taking place, and it shuts it down until you can process it. And God kept that hidden in my life until I was ready to say, okay, let's do this. And then he revealed it to me. Now, did I think that that was going to happen in the midst of moving, in the midst of infertility, in the midst of like the crazy chaos that it was? No, but in his infinite goodness, he did not say yes to a baby during that season.
Because it was a train wreck. I mean, it was...
You're allowed
Yeah.
to say it, I was a train wreck.
Okay. She was a train wreck. I'm just... yeah, it would have been awful parents, I think, at that point, at that stage of the game, you know, because...
Well, you even said in your pre-interview that you were questioning, what did I get myself into, and how am I going to even sustain in this? And emotionally for infertility for women, but what about men? I mean, is this hard on men?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like, you know, you want to be, like, you're the man, you want to be a provider for your family, you know. You try to do a house, and you try to have kids, try to take care of what you need to take care of, and you can't. You know, it's like a kind of a kick in the face, you know? I mean,
Wow. That's so. In this sense, then you got married, and I can only imagine the idealism going on as you had Google eyes for him since you were 13. You know, you probably had a lot of this planned out, and
I had high expectations. This was going to be beautiful,
Yeah.
like this thing we've waited for so long. I mean, I was in high school, and, you know, I didn't remember my abuse, but it happened. I met him while it was going on. So I knew my husband, but I didn't know about that.
Wow.
Which was just nuts, you know. But I did. I had googly eyes for him for a very, very long time. And so then for us to get married and it to fall apart so quickly just felt terrible.
So walking through abuse, now you're back at IVF, and you've got the money because of this bad cabin purchase that you made that turned out to be just exactly kind of what the Lord wanted. Those of you that have money pits, hang true, because there's possibly hope. Pattersons, hang on there, you know, there's hope, you know, but the whole story just kind of weaves into this realization that God is doing something in you during this waiting period. And had you realized that at the moment, or?
Hindsight's 2020.
Right.
You know, like
Right.
I can look back on that and go,
Yeah.
oh, thank God. You know, thank God we didn't have Ellie when,
Yeah.
you know, when all that was happening. And
Yeah.
and I remember this moment where God kind of spoke to me. I was taking a shower and I was praying about it, and he was like, you want to see me faithful, take a pregnancy test. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, you know, like this is going to be the moment, this is going to be it. And it was negative. And so I just remember being like, really? Are you kidding me? And looking back on that, I can go, oh yeah, he was being faithful by saying no, because we had so much that needed to come out.
Yeah.
And to be accomplished before we could be the parents that he knew we could be, you know, that we were.
Wow.
John, how was the IVF process? What was that
brutal.
like?
It was brutal. I mean, hormone injections. I mean, it's like PMS for like 5 months in a row, you know? And it's horrible. I mean, it's just crazy.
Poor guy. He's so patient with me.
It was rough. But, I mean, you know, you stand strong, stand true, you know? It's gonna work out. You just gotta be patient, you know?
Okay. So you started off with how many embryos?
2 to start off with.
Okay.
And then we had a miscarriage.
Right at the beginning, Ellie was a twin for a very short period of time.
Okay.
And, you know, I was getting ready to come sing on stage one Sunday, and I had to call Jeremy and tell him I couldn't be here because I had some really, really heavy bleeding, and Bethany and Rob showed up at our house to pray with us, and I thought it was failing, you know, and our hearts were sunk. That's when we went to Columbus and found out that Ellie was a twin, but her twin didn't survive. So she knows that she's a twin, and she's really looking forward to getting to heaven someday to meet that child.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Wow. So you miscarried one of those babies and continued on with a healthy pregnancy to have
Yeah.
Ellie.
Yep. So, and then Ellie came into the world like kicking and screaming. She was called the angry ginger baby as a child because she had red hair for a short period and was just cried a lot. But, you know, being her parents was just a joy. I mean, it's hard. Parenting is hard. Babies are hard. Everything's hard. But there was such a joy during that season where we finally got this gift that we wanted for so long.
And Ellie, isn't she a joy to all of us that we get to know her? Oh my gosh. I mean,
Such a
she
special
is,
little thing.
we just, she comes to my farm and she says, I'm going to grow up and be a barrel racer someday. And I'm like, oh,
She's got
Lord.
big plans. That's my tattoo. Though she be but little, she is fierce.
Oh,
That's that little
yeah,
girl.
yeah. So along comes Ellie. She's healthy. And then you guys kind of got the itch to have another child?
Yeah, so Ellie was, I don't remember. I know that she was 3 when the boys were born. So she would have been 1.5 maybe. And we kind of, or 1 really, and we kind of decided that we were going to try for a year to get pregnant on our own. And I was on staff here at the time, going to staff meetings regularly, so they got to kind of watch that process with us and walk it with us. And you know, it didn't happen. And we thought, well, maybe, you know, our bodies had fixed themselves and figured things out, and it still didn't happen. So we decided in that time period that we were going to begin to tithe. I mean, and to really tithe, not just like $10 in an offering plate, you know, which we don't pass offering plates, but $10 in a tall red box.
You'd have been waiting a while on that one.
And, you know, we said, okay, so we could be saving this money to try and do IVF again, but we're going to give it to God because, you know, he's more responsible with it than we are anyway, and he knows what he's doing. So after we made that conscious decision and continued to try, we were approached by not only my parents, but also a couple from the church that wanted to see our family be what we wanted it to be and offered to help pay for another round of
So did you
IVF.
like put a sign out looking for IVF funds? I mean, you know, God just kind of like showed up with this.
He really did. He did. And it was within weeks of each other. My mom and I had a conversation. And then shortly after that, we were approached by a couple in the church that gave very generously so that we only paid like $1,400 of the process.
Wow.
That second time around.
Wow. That is so,
And
I
that's
mean,
amazing.
it's obvious that he's kind of trying to write your story for you, and there's no excuses.
Yes.
I'm even going to pay for it, or I'm going to give it from a sticky note at your cabin door, and that those kind of things really, really do happen. And then in the middle of it all, you still opted to do a discipline, added spiritual discipline to your life of tithing. And when
That's not easy.
you know, I mean, it's not easy anyway, but then when you really want something like a child, why wouldn't you think that God would justify that you don't need to give the money to me, give it to your family? And yeah, wow, that's absolutely. So the IVF process started again. And how did that go? What happened? I mean, obviously we know we got a set of twins out of it, but there's a little more of a storyline there that I don't think a lot of us knew.
Yeah, so we opted to do 2 embryos again, and our doctor afterward asked us why we did that. And I said, well, it's because we're never doing this again. So I would like to get as much bang for our buck as possible. And so be it, let's just see what happens. And because we had miscarried with Ellie, and so I didn't want to walk away from something like that empty-handed. And so we decided to put 2 in. 1 embryo split into our twin boys, and so they're identical twins. And then the other embryo took as well, and so we were pregnant with triplets.
Wow.
And she looked at me when we did that ultrasound, and afterwards, and she said, "Do you need a hug?" I said, I do.
Yeah.
So, you know, we were pregnant with triplets there for a while, and then about 10 weeks, we went into a specialist that dealt with multiple pregnancies and found out that we had miscarried 1. And, you know, that was one of those weird experiences that pain is so tangible. I mean, like, miscarriage is awful. And it's a grief that no one should ever have to walk through. And nobody should ever have to experience that. But it's a real thing, and so often it gets kind of pushed off to the
Absolutely.
side or shoved under the rug. And even our experiences was different with most because we were still pregnant when I miscarried. So, but I still felt that loss. I stood right over there and I worshiped, and John stood beside me, and we just wept and wept and wept because there's this life. This child would have looked like Ellie, would have looked like the boys, would have looked like John, or would have been a boy or a girl, and to not know.
And miscarriage is something, no, I mean, I've lost a child, she was 23, but miscarriage, you have all this imagery and you have all this hope in this child, and then they're just not there anymore. And I was noticing on our Facebook page, actually our newsletter that goes out in the email, that we are now part of trying to promote a thing called Cradled by Hope. And my friend Lauren, you guys know Lauren and Jordan, they used to be New Hopers and they've since moved out of state, but she too had multiple births and then lost in the midst of that multiple birth plan. And her agony is still kind of haunts her. And so I just want to encourage any of you, if you're walking in a season of that, whether it's new, fresh, or an old wound, make sure that you hunt that out. And actually, I just found out that Miss Darnell is actually here today, who's kind of helping New Hope kind of move in that direction. So please head out there to the Welcome Center for any information. But don't go through that alone. Come see us. Come see Laura. Hunt us down, because Linda, we would never want anyone to have to kind of walk through that journey of grief alone. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, but I'm so thankful that you are a strength and a pillar on both of your parts, that you can speak into that for anyone that's here in New Hope. That's a real big thing. So Cradled by Hope is, and use us in so many ways on that. It's incredible. It's incredible.
All right. Did you ever want to doubt that God had prepared you for the assignment?
Yeah, were we prepared for twins? Who's prepared for that?
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. Did you doubt that God prepared us?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was a having twins was rough.
Yeah.
I mean, twice the feedings, twice the diapers, twice the everything.
Yeah.
On top of a toddler who was probably
Needy.
losing her mind. Needy?
Yeah, needy,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. No, that was a ugly stage of life. But it's funny, in the midst of it, the boys are 6 months old, and he looked at me one day and goes, "You want to have another baby?" And
I was just
went,
joking, though.
Are you kidding? No.
No, I was joking. Oh, no, I was joking.
After my response, he now says he's kidding.
No,
'cause
I was kidding.
It was a little ugly there for a minute, but
I was joking.
Wow.
Challenge, healing in the middle of all this. And let's just, obviously this isn't the message for dealing with being sexually abused for how many years?
11.
11 years in the middle of IVF and loss and new marriage and moving and now twins. So now you have 3. Did you feel like God was walking the journey with you? Did you feel independent of it? Were you able actually to reflect back and kind of see how patience, I know there's a rumor out there that patience is a virtue, but, is it a characteristic that you actually started to see grow in your life?
Yeah, I'm trying to formulate a thought. So through that whole experience, I'm going to counseling on a regular basis, and I'll advocate for that for everybody. Find a good counselor, stick with them. They are God's people. I knew that I felt like God wanted me to do something when the boys were, it was like January 2018. 2018. In January, I felt like God wanted me to do something. There were some different circumstances that took place that it came to my attention that other people were vulnerable to the perpetrators in my life. And I felt as if God wanted me to make a police report. Not that I knew that that would change anything or make something happen or whatever, but I felt like if I did that, then at least they would know that I knew, and that maybe it would stop someone else from getting hurt.
Right.
So in January of 2018, I went to the police and I filed a report. And, they brought the one guy in and interviewed him, and they were never able to get his son in and interview him, and nothing has ever happened. Do I think God's done with it? No. I think he had his purpose in it. But that started a series of events that I did that, and then I was invited to speak at the women's event, and then I was invited to speak for the Wonder Woman series and for the Perpetrators series that year and sort of tell my story.
Yeah.
And the week that I got ready to speak for the Wonder Woman series, the boys were just shy of 18 months old. I took a pregnancy test, and lo and behold, came Finn. And that morning, it is the funniest story to this day, because it was completely unexpected that God did that. He gave us a gift for being faithful. And neither of us knew it was coming. And so I had just quit nursing the boys, and 3 weeks later we find out we're pregnant on the same week that I'm getting ready to speak up for the Wonder Woman series. So I got a chance to announce it from the stage and share it with the people that we have walked this journey with. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget the looks in their eyes from this row. It was Whitney Schaefer and her family. So like Chris Harris, and they were all sitting right there, and they were all bawling. And I was like, I know, right? And it was this miraculous gift that God had given us that
Yeah, I
took
got
us
the
completely
text
off
at
guard.
5 a.m. with the picture of the test strip. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's 2 lines. Oh my gosh.
That's not what we said.
Oh.
It was a little more colorful than that at our house.
Yeah.
Do you remember that morning?
Oh, yeah.
As clearly as I do.
Oh, yeah.
My husband is not a man of many words, but he had some things to say that day.
A few, yeah.
But at the same time, I believe that Finn is a gift to both of us, but I think he's a gift to my husband because he is his dad's
Yes.
baby. I mean, he is on this man's lap all the time, and everything is daddy, 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 daddy. And so I know that this was he is part of our reward, and I think he's a special gift to you.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. Such a beautiful story. And just going back, even back to the cabin, the 28 days you spent there, and then having the stranger show up and give you exceeding abundantly above all that
We
you
can
could
ask
ask
or
or imagine. And then you end up pregnant because you have enough money now to do the IVF, and then you have a baby, and then somebody gifts you, and because you again, exceeding abundantly above all that you could ask or imagine, and you have 2 more babies, and then because of your faithfulness, God blesses you with a baby that you didn't even ask or imagine.
All accurate
Wow.
things.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh, wow.
And I know, fortunately, I get to do life with Laura often, and she's always calling me going, you aren't going to believe this, but there's an envelope that just showed up in our mailbox, with diaper money, or you aren't going to believe this. There's just always these one thing after another, and not only does it bless you guys, but it literally blesses us here at New Hope. Through your song, through your worship, John, through your fellowship, just through who you are as a man, the way that you are a patient person with your sons, and the way you love your daughter. And when we were actually processing this early pre-interview, the Lord kind of brought me into Colossians, and I want to leave you with this amazing blessing over top of you, because Paul is writing in Colossians. He's talking to a group of people that he's so proud of who they've let him become. And God is like that with us. He's like, we might not see it, but he's like so excited that that you've stepped up here. He's so excited that you pushed through this. He's so excited that he let your character grow. And it says, for this very reason, since the day we heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you and asking God to fill you with the knowledge of his will through all spiritual wisdom and understanding. And we pray this in order that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and you may please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience. And I just couldn't think of a better prayer for a family that is just so worthy of just the gifts that God can pour out on you. And by no means is it because we think you're perfect or what, but you're willing. You know, you're willing vessels to let the Lord show up. And that's all he wants of us. He doesn't expect us to be all figured out and all jazzed up and all perfected in so many ways. He's the only perfection in it. And what a gift. What an absolute gift it's been to hear your story. Haven't they been awesome? Well, let me pray. We'll crook here and we'll move on. Heavenly Father God, I just love when we were doing the pre-interview, Tony says, and then God showed off and gave a spin. You know, something that he said, yeah, you think that's good. Wait till you see this. And Lord, I just have no doubt that the generation of generations of the Marco family is going to be a blessing for your kingdom. I love how you took the time, Father, to even break a generational stronghold of something that was completely disassociated from Laura's heart and mind, that allows her to not even parent through it, God, that it's in spite of it. She gets to love and mother and parent. And I love how John has remained strong and how he is quiet. And Lord, he's perfect for this journey. Yes. He's perfect to stand back and remain beside Laura and not quiet with her, but beside her in it. And how he just sits calmly and he just, and even if it's a struggle, Father, he remains. He just remains. And so as we just continue to connect to you, we continue to look to the love of your vine, the gift that it is. I pray that every person within this room, within the TV screen, within the Facebook page, whatever it is, God, I pray that you would allow yourself to realize if you're waiting on something, that it's in that patience that we praise. It's in that patience that we ask in wisdom. It's in that patience that we recognize the character assignment and that he's building in us. And God, it's within the amazing love that you have for us. You do this work. Father, may you continue to glorify yourself through the body of New Hope. And may we find ourselves a people group that wants to go to all places, all parts of the world with the message and the good news of Jesus Christ. Yes. We thank you, and we thank you. It's a hallelujah to you, God, in your name. Amen.
Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Oh.